Okay. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us. I'm so delighted to see so many of us here to hear Lucie Willan speak. Lucie came to gardening after being involved in the art world for 10 years, and she was lucky to work at several historic gardens in England, such as Bramdean House, Sissinghurst, Hidcote, and Monk's House. It was at Sissinghurst that she became interested in Greek flora and dry gardening after creating designs for an area in that garden known as the living desert, Italian getting in the way. When she traveled to Greece, she immediately fell in love with the country and its flora. Greece is, as you all know, considered the botanical paradise of Europe, with approximately 6,000 different species of flora and around 1,000 endemic species. Lucie has now worked at Sparoza for 3 years and is powering ahead with many amazing new initiatives, which some of you will have heard about if you've attended the General Assembly last year in November. She is hoping that by showcasing this beautiful, natural, sustainable and ecological garden, she can overcome the lack of horticultural tradition in Greece and convince people that they can use the drought-tolerant and native plants to be found in the wild. Tonight, she's going to introduce us to some of the plants, just some of them, of these many thousands, together as well as a few Greek myths to show how us gardeners can take inspiration from these wild places in our garden making. Thank you for agreeing to talk, Lucie, and if you'd like to share your screen now.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. And happy Valentine's Day, everyone. I thought this was a particularly appropriate way of starting with this shot of the spilly alpine meadows in Crete. And this is Tulipa dorflori interspersed with an extraordinary array of orchids. Really, it's particularly appropriate to be talking to you on Valentine's Day, because this presentation is really, it talks about my love affair with Greece, really, and how over the past few years, it has been an extraordinary privilege, really, to get to know the diversity and the range of Greek flora. And when I was first asked to talk about plant hunting in Greece, it was actually a talk for the Alpine Garden Society, who were instrumental, really, in introducing me to Greece and its flora, because they gave me an extraordinary bursary to go and see autumn flowering bulbs in the Peloponnese. And this really began an amazing love affair with Greece and its flora, and I'm incredibly grateful to them for the opportunity, and to the Mediterranean Garden Society subsequently. But the way I want to talk to you about plant hunting in Greece this evening is with the backdrop of Greek mythology. And this is very subjective and possibly a little bit strange, but bear with me. It is when I'm working on my own at Sparoza and listening to podcasts and things, it's amazing how often your mind wanders and you sort of get engaged with all sorts of different pictures and thoughts whilst you're listening to things. And it was listening to Stephen Fry's Mythos that I suddenly became aware of how my love of Greek mythology, which has always been there since I was a child, has been transformed by being in Greece through actually knowing the places that these myths happened on. And somehow that is incredibly exciting to me. And I thought it was an interesting entry point to use in order to discuss some of the amazing sites and plants of Greece. This, as many of you will know, is Delphi on Mount Parnassus. And it is the center of the universe, according to the Greek, the Hellenic world, because it was at the Temple of Apollo that the Omphalos was, the navel of the world. And it is an astonishingly beautiful place. And this is part of the ruins covered in Pisum sativum, which, yeah, is just absolutely breathtaking in the spring. And I thought I would start with a few stats about Greece and this rather amazing map on the right, which is England superimposed on Greece. And to me, every time I see this, I find it astonishing because I think of Greece as being much larger than it actually is. And if you have the whole of the UK, it's considerably bigger than Greece. And, you know, the population of Greece, 10.3 million versus 67.7 million in the UK. And the majority of the population of that 10.3 million are in the cities. So you have this incredible intensity of populations and then vast areas of very little habitation, really. And this is astonishingly brilliant for the flora, really, and for nature. The mountains, I mean, over 80% of Greece is mountainous, which again is quite an amazing statistic. And the tallest mountain around Athens is higher than Ben Nevis. So again, just in this sort of mountainous ring around Athens, we have mountains the same size as Snowdon and taller than Ben Nevis. So it really is an astonishing place with nearly 6,000 native plants. And I mean, in the UK, we only have 1,600 native plants. And some of the islands I'll be talking to you about have almost the same diversity of flora in these small islands. So it's an amazing paradise and a place that I am constantly excited and inspired by. The nature of the climate through having the Mediterranean climate, which is very, very hot in the summer and then cool, wet winters in theory, it means that there's an incredible amount of endemism and the plants have had to diversify and specialize in order to survive in these very tricky environments. And so you have around 1,000 endemic species in Greece and around 40 in the UK. So again, the level of this diversity and the excitement of this place as a sort of botanical paradise is, I can't overstress it really. And there are over 6,000 islands, which is, I mean, you could spend an entire lifetime exploring these amazing islands, and over 4,000 named mountains. So we have an incredible country, and I really feel that I'm just beginning to explore and get to grips with this incredible place. So this is a mythological map of Greece, and one that I rather love, actually. And the big red dots are the places that I have decided with a great amount of difficulty to concentrate on this evening to talk to you about the flora of these different places and the associated myths, so that, well, hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I do. I just find it completely wonderful that you have all these different places that, you know, Seriphos, where Perseus grew up, or, you know, Parnassus, where the Muses lived. So there are all these different things that somehow add an extra special thing when you're exploring these mountains and landscapes whilst looking at these amazing plants. So this is agricultural weeds, and I'm famous for photographing agricultural weeds everywhere I go. But this was a very special moment for me because this field of poppies with Bellavalia and all sorts in it is on the edge of Lake Stymphalia, which is where Hercules carried out one of his labors when he was clearing up the Stymphalian birds. And to me, to be in this area, and the mist was pouring out across this enormous lake and creating this extraordinary picture of olive trees and poppies and all the spring geophytes. It was a very, very special moment. And again, it brings the myths to life somehow when you can be in the place where they were meant to happen. This is Iris Attica, and one of my all-time favourite spring plants. And this is photographed on the slopes of Mount Kitharonas, which is the second highest mountain in Attica. And it's also famous because it's where Oedipus was laid out on the mountain to die, and also where Actaeon was eventually killed after spying on Artemis. He was torn apart by the hounds on this mountain. And Adonis Kalenio, this is an amazing endemic plant to the Peloponnese, and named after Adonis, the lover of Aphrodite, and Kaleni, which is a mountain that is endemic to, but also that's the place where Hermes was born. So you have all these incredible mythological associations in this one plant that is in itself a complete marvel. And it can only be found on certain mountains of the Peloponnese, and it sites itself in these extraordinary depressions in these sort of limestone dolines. And you find, if you're looking from above down, these incredible pools of yellow from this very, very statuesque, very beautiful Adonis. And it's one of the most amazing sights I've ever seen. And this photo was taken in May, so quite high altitude and just incredible. And this is me, Marte, and Lefteris sitting amongst the Adonis. And it gives you a sort of sense of how you get these sort of lakes of Adonis across these limestone dolines. And the reason I have this photo here is because plant hunting is never as much fun if you don't have friends with you. And I'm very, very fortunate that Lefteris Thariotis is one of the most wonderful people I know, and he is one of Greece's leading plants people and plantsmen. And he has been very kind in taking me on many of his adventures, and also as an assistant on some of his trips that he's been doing for research projects for the tulips.gr research in Thessaloniki. And Marte, or Laszlo Marte Talas, I should say, is the man in the centre, who's a wonderful Hungarian gardener and botanist who I was fortunate enough to have as my assistant at Sparoza in 2022. And on the right, you've got Lefteris resting his head on a wonderful endemic species called Pterocephalus perennis, and that is found on Mount Parnassus, the mountain I'm just about to talk about. So this is one of my favorite mountains in Greece. It's nearly 2,500 meters, and it is incredibly sacred to Dionysus, to Apollo. It's where Pegasus lived. It's also where the muses used to hang out. If they weren't on Helicon, they were on Parnassus. And it's also where Orpheus, who was the son of Calliope, the muse of poetry, first met Apollo. And some people say that Apollo was his father. Some people say he was just a friend of the muses. But Apollo was the one that gave Orpheus his lyre. So in this incredible setting, this is where Orpheus first started to play the lyre. And what you can see in the foreground here, these chocolate sort of coppery leaves are the leaves of Paeonia parnassica, which is one of the most beautiful peonies, one of my desert island plants. I think if I could only take a handful of plants, I would really struggle not to include this in the list. This photo was taken at the beginning of May, and I came back twice more to Parnassus in order to see the peonies in perfect bloom. But it was completely worth it because they are mind-blowingly beautiful. And I've tried to give you a sense of the colour is somewhere between sort of oxblood and almost black in some cases. And when the light shines through them, they're lit up in the way that you can see on the right. And the way that these plants place themselves across these limestone escarpments is just breathtaking. And you can see right at the back, it almost looks completely black, the stand of peonies in the right-hand image. And then as they hit the light, you can see them sort of lit up and a sort of deep red. But you can't imagine anything quite so beautiful. I really, no landscape designer, no gardener could create something quite as perfect. You have these enormously tall limestone escarpments with ledges in them, and the peonies have positioned themselves throughout these ledges in a very almost Japanese garden design kind of feel, because there is a real minimalism to it. And I climbed right up onto the top of these rocks in order to see how far the peonies went. And amazingly, some of the deep crevices were supporting peonies right down. So they were 2-3 meters deep, and you would find peonies growing in the cracks in these limestone rocks. And a truly amazing sight, and endemic to Parnassus and also to Mount Helicon, which is another place associated with the Muses. And I should say that Parnassus is also very interesting because it has over 850 different plant species. And I think, looking at my notes, it's 50 Greek endemics, 4 local endemics, and I think something like 12 regional endemics. And this is one of the local endemics, this incredible campanula, which grows out of the rocks. It's a stunning chasmophyte. And I hope you can see on the right-hand side that it grows on these vertical faces all the way up the cliff. And this is Topeliana subspecies delphica. And it's just amazing. And what you can see on the left is really, it gives a slight impression of the electric blue against the kind of yellow grey of the rock. And it is phenomenal. When, I mean, the car was screeched to a halt in order to take these photographs because it was such an incredible sight. And here we have, going up the mountain to the sort of snowmelt region, we've got Fritillaria mutabilis, which is astonishingly lovely. It looks quite understated here, but it has a huge variation in its stripes in a similar way to Fritillaria greca. And it is, if you imagine the crocus on the right, this mutabilis is in the rocks just above the crocus. So you have this amazing combination of the snow, the crocus and the syllabifolia, and the Fritillaria mutabilis all through the rocks above it. And this incredible rock garden, and a truly amazing place with wide-reaching views, and yeah, just breathtaking. And what I didn't capture here, which is a shame actually, I should have tried to find a photo, is that it grows with a lot of Euphorbia mercenites as well. So you have these incredible sort of citric bursts of Euphorbia interspersed with this gorgeous browny green Fritillaria mutabilis. And of course the crocus and the flashes of the purple crocus and the blue scilla, just stunning, and all combinations that we can take inspiration from in our gardens. You know, these the way that the plants grow in these rivers with companion plants basically, and I find them endlessly glorious. This is the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, so this is on the same mountain on Parnassus, and here we've got a selection of spring annuals. We've got the Asphodeline lutea, I think that's Tordillium apulum rather than Orlea grandiflora, but Veitchia, Silene colorata, all sorts of gorgeous things growing there, the Pisum that I mentioned earlier. And yeah, just these incredible meadows that cover these ancient sites. And when you look at these incredible Doric columns, and I mean, what's not to love about this, and a sense of the power and influence of the ancient world. And so moving quickly on, so across from the Gulf of Corinth in the Peloponnese, we have Mount Helmos. And this is another of my favorite mountains, a little bit shorter than Parnassos, but an extraordinary place with a huge amount of diversity. And we've got, how many endemic species here? 27 local endemics, and I think 90 Greek endemics. So you've got an incredible diversity again in this one place. And I love these stands of Fraxinus ornus, and they grow with an endemic Amelanchier that I'll show you as well. And so this, when you get into the Alpine plains, this is, Lefteris and I actually came, the first time I came was to collect seed for the tulips.gr programme of the Tulipa australis. And you get these beautiful carpets of this beautiful yellow tulip all the way across the Alpine meadows, along with Viola etiolica, which is a plant named after Mount Iti, which was where Hercules had his funeral pyre, and Asperula arcadiensis, which is a stunningly gorgeous local endemic chasmophyte, which you find growing off the cliffs, and just all beautiful, beautiful plants. And this is the Amelanchier I was mentioning, Amelanchier parviflora subspecies Helmea. And to me, what is so exciting about plant hunting, particularly in Greece, is that you are looking at plants in the wild for their ornamental potential in gardens. And for me, something like this is just too good to not be in gardens. And yet I don't think I've ever seen it offered in a nursery anywhere. And it would be wonderful if, yeah, it's one of the things that we could bring back. And it's something that we are constantly doing with our plant hunting expeditions, is to collect seeds, collect cuttings. And it's exciting to me how many things have made their way from cuttings taken on plant trips to the nursery at Sparoza and into the garden. This photo is taken on Helmos in July. And when we started off at the bottom of the mountain, it was 40 degrees. And by the time we got to this height, which I think is about 1,000 meters, it was 18 degrees. And so you have this wonderful sense almost of turning the clocks back. So as you get higher up the mountain, you can regain spring in summer, which is, to me, ludicrously exciting, because summer can feel very barren and very dry, but actually there's always something to see if you go up a mountain. And this I've included because this is the Styx Valley, if you believe it or not. So the River Styx goes along the bottom of this valley, and to me, all these this planting combination of the Digitalis ferruginea and the Pitylostum and Apha and the verbascums and the eryngiums is just incredibly inspiring. And what a great garden that would make on a dry slope, you know, all these different things that work so well together and have a remarkable drought tolerance as well. And these gorgeous little things are one of my favorite Greek cyclamen, and this is what you find at the bottom of the Styx Valley. So this is cyclamen rhodium subspecies Peloponnesiacum, and it is just breathtakingly good. And what you can see here, the sort of gold flecked leaves are from the pollen from the pines above it. So you have these luminous flowers with golden specked leaves below. And what is not to love about that? I would love to grow this at Sparoza. Unfortunately, I don't think we have enough damp to sustain them happily, but it's something I would like to try. We'll see. If it was on an irrigation line, then maybe it would be possible. But they are one of those plants is sort of that you have to pinch yourself when you first see them. And these photos were taken as the light was fading after a very, very long day of running around Helmos looking at plants. And it's something I'll never forget, actually. And moving on quickly is Seraphos, which is where Perseus spent much of his childhood, and also where the Cyclops was meant to live, where Odysseus came to slay him. And this is one of the islands in the Cyclades. And I was very fortunate to come here for work, for a gardening job with my friend and former assistant, Martina Galati. And this photo is taken from the castle at the top of the Hora. And I found it, again, incredibly exciting to see the chasmophytes growing over the castle. And these are some of them. So you've got the Silene Cythnia, and also Dianthus fruticosus, subspecies fruticosus. And these amazing chasmophytes grow all over the top of the Hora around the castle. And just wonderful plants, and so exciting to see them. Cythnia is obviously an endemic, and the Dianthus fruticosus is just breathtaking, but this was sort of slightly too early for the full effect, but still gives you a sense of quite how beautiful they are. And I was very fortunate whilst we were on Seriphos that I was taken by Kyria Golga and Martina to this abandoned mine, which is known as Megalo Livadi. And it, to me, was one of these moments. Greece has the ability to reduce me to tears. And this was one of those moments when I just stood and felt the enormity and the beauty of these landscapes, because this is just as we're moving from spring into summer. And this incredible autumn colour you're seeing is Euphorbia dendroides, which is the tree euphorbia that you find all over Greece. And it, in preparation for summer estivation to cope with the extreme drought around Greece, it puts out amazing summer colour and then loses its leaves and looks almost dead. And this site is particularly special because it has been left as a memorial to the miners that lost their lives during the miners' strike in, I think it was 1916. And several people lost their lives. And it's one of the most extraordinary memorials I've come across, because you had abandoned mining buckets and the old jetties where the iron ore would be loaded onto boats. And it's just been left in this sort of pristine frigana. And I can't imagine a more perfect memorial to the miners. And what we have here is a lovely little Asteraceae endemic to the Cyclades, which is Hymenonema greca. And then on the right, we have Helichrysum italicum subspecies italicum, which to me is fascinating, because I don't know if any of you grow Helichrysum italicum in your gardens, but it certainly doesn't look like that. So I wonder what it is that we are all growing as Helichrysum italicum, and what it is that the nurseries, is it a subspecies, is it a different species, what is it? But it's a great plant, this Helichrysum, and I took lots of cuttings, and we've got more than 50 plants in the nursery at Sparoza, and it's already growing in the frigana. So to me, again, very exciting to see these plants in the wild and the ornamental potential of them. And here you can see it growing right on the edge of the sea with Centaurea spinosa, which is another one of my favorite spiny garrigue frigana plants, which has this wonderful blue sort of glaucous spine to it. And this is, well, what can you say about that? This is, to me, so inspiring as a landscape. And you've got all sorts of different things, from Bolotta to the Centaurea, as I was talking about, the Euphorbia dendroides, tons of different annuals. And what you can't quite see is there's lots of Anacampsis sancta, the beautiful little pink orchid growing amongst these spiny mounds. But what an inspiring thing. And this is where we should be looking for drought-tolerant landscapes, because you can't produce something better than this, in my opinion, and no irrigation needed. So moving swiftly on to the Aegean Islands, This is Samos, which is the birthplace of the goddess Hera. And Hera was born under a vitex, and the sanctuary of Hera, the Iraeon, is one of the largest temples in the Hellenistic world, the most enormous columns I've ever seen. And I was very fortunate to come to Samos with Lefteris thariotis again, in search of two of Greece's rarest plants, Consolida samia, which hadn't been seen until last been seen in the 1960s, and a very, very beautiful rare dactyloriza, which is Greece's rarest orchid. And so we hot-footed it up. It was a 2-day trip, and this was the first mountain that we climbed. And this is the summit of Mount Carvuni. And again, I talk about Greece reducing me to tears, but this, Lefteris and I were both weeping at this point. And this is Atrophaxis billardierii, and it's just the most astonishing plant. And to see these spiny mounds of beautiful pink flowers all the way across the hillside, it was just breathtaking. And this is right at the summit. So we're, I think, at about 1,100 meters here. Extraordinary plants all around, from Thymus samia, which is another endemic, Silene ervilii, and you can see it here with this very close cropped, rather beautifully shaped plant, which is a goat-pruned Quercus coccifera. And so you have these wonderful surreal shapes in amongst with these mounds, and there are all sorts of different sideritis and you name it, asperulas. It was very, very exciting. And one of the plants that I brought back with me was this oreganum, and the photo is actually taken at Sparoza. This is Oreganum sapilium, which is one of the sort of rare plants. It's not endemic to the island, but it's a wonderful rare oregano, and we're so lucky to have it at Sparoza now. And Helichrysum orientale, growing in one of the crevices of rock on the tallest mountain on Samos, which is Mount Kirkis. And this was day 2, and we were climbing up the mountain in order to try and find Consolida samia, which is this very rare Consolida that is only found in the scree on this mountain between 600 and 800 meters. And it really is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. And this is the place that it lives. So this escarpment of scree is where the Consolida likes to be. And we did search, but it was rather like trying to find a sort of pale blue needle in a grey scree haystack. But I'm delighted to say that it was actually rediscovered last year. So one of the local botanists who very kindly helped Lefteris and I when we came to Samos, he was the one that rediscovered it. And so it was a very special thing. And more of these incredible displays of plants. And here we've got Bolossa acetabulosa, we've got Smyrnium perfoliatum, this astragalus, Creticus, and all sorts of different verbascums. And again, these goat-pruned oaks, these Quercus coccifera, and a more inspiring, beautiful landscape I can't imagine. I mean, they have the quality of a really cutting-edge landscape designer, but plus, plus, plus. And on the same trip, this was the other end of the scale. This was hunting in the stream beds for Greece's rarest orchid, and this is Dactyloriza pythagorai, if I can say that, Pythagorai, and that is named after Pythagoras, who was a native of Samos. And it is only found in this one stream bed on this one mountain. And it's, well, I find this all extremely moving, really, because we found it in quite large numbers in this tiny stream bed. But the reality is, if anything happened, if a fire came through, these plants are so incredibly vulnerable. And if someone comes and digs them up, you know, they really are very, very vulnerable, and well, they need to be protected. But the photo that you can see on the left is the orchid just about coming into flower. And it's a surprisingly statuesque plant. If you see Lefteris on the right, it comes up to about his knee. So it's a really quite a large plant. And moving on to Lesvos. This is one of my favorite islands. I'm going to say that about every island, I fear. But it is an incredible place, and it really deserves to be more celebrated. It is the third largest of the Greek islands after Crete and Evia, and it has an incredible diversity of flora. It has between 1,400 and 1,500 different plant species. It's an incredible place for orchid hunting. And although it only has one endemic plant, which I think is Alyssum lesbiaca, it has several plants that you only find growing on Lesvos in the Greek sphere. And this, to me, I mean, the first day that we were there, we went up Mount Olympus, which is the highest mountain on Lesvos, and it gets to nearly 1,000 meters. But the carpets of Euphorbia rigida all across in this very, very misty environment. I mean, we could barely see each other as we were walking. It was incredibly beautiful. And again, something that I would love to experiment with, sort of designing something with a carpet of Euphorbia rigida. And this is the Asphodel Meadows, which many of you will know as one of the regions of the underworld. And to me, seeing this on Lesvos, the cows emerging through the asphodels, you can completely understand why it became a region of the underworld. There was something completely otherworldly and eerie about this site of these animals emerging amongst the flowers. And it gave me goosebumps seeing it, actually. And it was at a particularly special part of the island where you have an ancient burial site as well, where I think it's a Roman site, so it's not Hellenistic, but it is. It has sarcophagi carved into the rocks facing the sea. And so you have this incredible sort of energy of this area, and to have these extraordinary tombs and these fields of asphodels right next door, somehow it was like the myths were being brought to life. And here's the other asphodel that I saw in huge numbers, Asphodeline lutea. And again, wow, I wouldn't mind being an ordinary soul stuck in the asphodel meadows if it looks like that. And these are some of the rarer plants on Lesvos. So I went with Lefteris to Lesvos to see and seek out and monitor the Tulipa bithynica, which is actually a tulip that you find in numbers in Turkey, but it's, I think I'm right in saying Lesvos is the only Greek island that has Tulipa bithynica. And it's a gorgeous thing. And that was at about 700 meters altitude and in large numbers, which was very interesting. And the only place in Greece that has Rhododendron luteum growing wild. And I wish I could share the smell with you, because to have these incredible rivers running down the mountain, clad with Rhododendron luteum on all sides, it is one of the most extraordinary sights. And for a plant that I'm so familiar with from English gardens, to see it growing in the wild in such an amazing way, it's truly astonishing. And this was the bottom of this riverbed, and the Rhododendron luteum went all the way up this sort of river stream bed, and the scent was completely mind-blowing. And it was also growing with the rare fritillary that you find on Lesvos, which is Fritillaria theophrastii. Well, I think it's been renamed as pontica, but I prefer theophrastii because Lesvos is also the island where Theophrastus, the father of botany, was born and grew up. It was also the place where Sappho lived. And here we've got some of the orchids that you can see on Lesvos. And we were actually a little bit late. Oh, sorry. Did someone want, was that a question or no? Okay. So this is some of the orchids that we saw. Unfortunately, because we were traveling around Lesvos in late April, we were a bit late for the main sort of display of orchids, which is much earlier on in the month. But these are Serapius orientalis, and the little white stars are Gagia greca, and just an amazing sight, growing very close to the sea. And here you go, this is Fritillaria theophrastii, or pontica, and this is two sides of the same rock. So you've got Peonia mascula, subspecies mascula, this incredible peony that was just about to flower. And on the other side, you have Fritillaria pontica. And what a combination. And I don't know if you can see beyond the peonies, you have huge amounts of blossom from the fruit trees as well. So an incredible rocky landscape, and incredibly inspiring to see the peonies growing there. And on Mount Olympus, we saw them growing amongst groves of sweet chestnut, which was also pretty stunning.
Yeah,
no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back on Lesvos, and just an amazing thing to see them growing on these very, very barren, rocky hillsides. And this was just along from an enormously dense sort of garrigue area that was entirely made up of Centaurea spinosa. So very, very beautiful. And where the Centaurea spinosa gives way, the rocks give the same effect as the Centaurea. And then you have the peonies and the fritillaries. And moving swiftly on to Crete. And this is my final island to explore with you. And it's also really, it's its own country. And I'm sure most of you are aware that Crete has a different religion historically with the Minoans to the rest of Greece. And it also only became part of Greece in 1913. It's the largest of all the Greek islands and the southernmost. And it really does feel like its own country. It is an astonishingly good place. And it has, I think I'm right in saying, about 1,500 different plant species. Let me check. 1,470 different species of plant and nearly 160 endemic species. And this is Prevely. And the palms that you see here are Phoenix theophrastii, again, named after the father of botany from Lesvos. And it's one of the few, I think one of two native European palm trees. And they are just phenomenal. And particularly the way that they sit in these deep gorges. And I couldn't make up my mind what image to use to introduce Crete. But I think for me, Crete is all about gorges and chasmophytes, plants that love growing and hanging out of rocks. And I think this is what you see so brilliantly here. You've got these rare endemic palm trees, and you have cliffs covered in amazing plants. And I've often talked about wanting to explore Crete with a drone so that you could actually see carefully what is actually growing at every different level. But it's so deep, these gorges, that often, even if you have binoculars, you can't really see what's going on. And these are two of my favorites. Ebenus cretica, which is one of the most stunning Fabaceae Cretan endemics. It is these incredible pink candles that flower sort of mainly May into June, but they hang off vertical cliff faces, and they are so ornamental and so charismatic in their huge pinkness, and they're incredible. They really, their roots get straight into these cliff faces, and you, in certain parts of Crete, you just have these epic displays of Ebenus creticus hanging off the sides of the hills, and Cyclamen creticum, which this was taken on the way to the Samaria Gorge, and it's so beautiful the way it places itself amongst the Daphnes and goat pruned Quercus coccifera, and you see this all over Crete. And whilst I took that picture on the way up to the Samaria Gorge, this is the Omelos Plateau, which is on the way up, and Tulipa bakeri, which is just so wonderful. And so many of you will know this from gardens. It's Lilac Wonder is a cultivar that is widely grown, and you cannot imagine how spectacular this is. This is an alpine meadow, and this is just at the beginning of the display. I think this photo was taken on about the 24th of April, and a friend that was there a week later sent me a photo, very smug, because the entire meadow was pink, but still breathtakingly beautiful, and very, very exciting to see these alpine geophytes. And this is another tulip in an alpine meadow in Crete. This is the Spilly Bumps, which is south of Rethymnon in the center of Crete, and Tulipa dorflori, and it is just glorious. I think this is the sun setting, and the way that they light up across this series of meadows that are sort of in the fold of a mountain is truly astonishing. I went back 3 times over the course of a very, very short visit just to soak it all up, because not only do you have the tulips, but you also have an incredible diversity of orchids. And here we go. So this is a few of the orchids that are in the same place as those tulips. This is all Spilly Bumps. And I decided to separate them into non-ophrys and others. But as you can see, just astonishing. The Anacamptis that you saw in the other photo with the tulips as well. Anacamptis collina, the Orchis simia, the monkey orchid, Neotinia lactea. You've got the amazing, well, I have a friend who calls it the naked lady orchid, the Orchis anthropophora, and the Pauciflora, which is the yellow that grows with it. The Serapias, absolutely breathtaking, and of course the man orchid, Orchis italica, because they look like little naked men. And these are the ophrys found on the same site, and these are all on one little hill. I mean, the diversity is astonishing. I think there are over 200 different species of orchids on Crete, and it's incredibly inspiring, and also hard to even get your head around these things. And Ophrys Ariadne, obviously Ariadne is the famous spinner who was the daughter of King Minos and Pasiphae, and Pasiphae was of course the woman who gave birth to the Minotaur. And then all these incredible ophrys from Episcopalis, which I love, with its very wide flower head, and Scolopax heldracii, which is a particularly large form of Scolopax, Ophrys cretica, Bombiliflora, which are absolutely tiny, and you name it, they're all absolutely breathtaking. And then this is one of my favorite trees. This is a subminoan olive, if you can believe it or not. So this dates back to Minoan civilization. This is over 3,000 years old, and it's in the Amari Valley, and it's just below the site, Monastiraki, which is where my friend Miranda, who's also laughing with me on the olive, her mother is a famous Minoan archaeologist, and she is the one who is responsible for digging this particular Minoan site. And so having this connection with this tree that dates to that period of civilization is just truly, truly astonishing. And a little bit of a reading list for you. These are a few of my favorite books on, well, to help with plant hunting and particularly Greek wildflowers, and the Helmut Baumann book on Greek wildflowers and plant lore in ancient Greece is really wonderful if you're interested in the connection between history and plants. Flowers of Crete is a wonderful encyclopedic guide to Crete and flora. Christopher Gray Wilson, Kit Gray Wilson's book on the bulbs of Greece is beautiful and also incredibly informative, and it makes an incredible present for anyone. The Flowers of Greece has just been reissued, the Lanfrancis and Yorgos Sfikas book. So if you can get your hands on a copy, the price has gone down from 300 odd pounds to about £100. And the Botanical Paradises, sorry, that's a typo, Botanical Paradises of Greece. It is a book in Greek written by Yorgos Sfikas, but it is one of the best guides to Greek flora, and he divides up the whole of Greece into regions and mountains. And even if you can't speak Greek, you can understand the locations, the topography, and also the botanical Latin. So it's a really wonderful guide. And that's my Instagram. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Okay. Hi, okay. Just going back onto gallery. Can you hear me, Lucy?
Yeah, hang on, I will stop share.
Thank you. Right, well, congratulations on your mastery of all of those Latin names, for having a plant name on every single slide, because that is so often missing, we find. And obviously for sharing your, you know, your real sense of wonder at this wonderful landscape. I know that there are, first of all, some questions and some comments that came up in the chat. So I'm going to ask Yvonne to deal with those, or, you know, via that. And then we'll go and turn to the questions in person, okay? So Yvonne, hi, are you there, my sweetheart?
Hi.
Yes?
Yes, indeed. Well, yes, we've got quite a few questions on the chat. I might say we had almost 150 people on the call. So is that a record?
Yeah.
Well done.
It still means that 100 people didn't turn up, because there were 250 people on the pre-registration. So, you know, you have to ask yourself, do you know what I mean? I mean, I could understand sort of 50, but you know, anyway, that it's still a record, and it's a very merited merit. It's all to your merit, Lucy. Okay. So
I mean, on the chat, first of all, could we just ask you again about your wildflower walk you're going to be doing in April? Sure. When are we going to get the details for how to register for this?
So it will come through soon. I think the idea is probably it will be all announced in early March. So watch this space, and it will be announced, I'm sure, on the website and also through the branch heads. So it'll go out through those two avenues.
Super. Okay. Well, we'll look forward to that. Rosie Byrne also wrote in to mention that at the week following that, it's the Corfu Garden Festival. And she's given us the website for that, but it's just corfugardenfestival.com. So don't forget that. And I think you'll be getting quite a few people interested in your anniversary weekend. Now, on to the actual talk. John Greenlee is interested in the grasses in the photos. Now, I'm not sure. I mean, you had so many pictures. I would just mention that my childhood school book about Greek mythology was called Grass of Parnassus.
Ah.
Is there a particular grass of Parnassus? What would it have been?
Well, that's a very good question. The grass of Parnassus that springs to mind is Stipa barbata that I've seen growing on Parnassus, but I have no idea if that is actually the grass that it refers to, and it's a wonderful question that I'll have to do some digging into. So thank you for that.
I mean, would it be possible to do a quick resume of the plants? I mean, I don't want to give you an enormous task here, but you know, we do normally after a Zoom talk publish a list of plants.
Oh, of course. I mean, I can put together a list, and yeah, and that can be sent out. And
mention a few grasses so that I know people would be very interested to see what can grow in these conditions.
Absolutely.
A lot of enjoyment of your term goat pruned, but of course they are goat pruned.
They are.
Now this is an interesting question from Heather Rosmarin, who say, are you exploring in your expeditions public or private lands, and do you need to get permission?
You don't need to get permission, and these are, in a lot of cases, they are places that are open to the public for walking, and particularly places like Helmos and Parnassus, they are national parks. So you can walk all over. I would say, I'm trying to think, there's no doubt in some places, such as the Omelos Plateau, where I took the photo of those tulips, there's a little bit of fence climbing involved. But I think for the most part, you could photograph those tulips from the roadside if you had a good zoom lens, rather than, you know, jumping a fence. But I'm afraid Lefteris and I do have a tendency to climb things. So
and we would remind everybody to be responsible in what they gather from the
absolutely site. And that's a key. Things aren't dug up. Occasionally cuttings are taken and seeds are collected, but we really don't believe in digging up geophytes or anything like that.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, now Eva Nissa is asking, what time of year were you on the various trips?
Sure.
Is that too wide a question for so many different
it covers quite a lot of ground. The majority of the images are taken springtime. The trips to let me think, Parnassus, there were photos taken in April, from early April through to late May. For Helmos, photos taken in July and April. And Seraphos was late May. Lesvos, late April. Samos, June. And where else did I go? Crete, late April.
Thank you. Okay, I hope everybody's made a note of that. and just to remind everybody watching that, of course, this talk will be up on YouTube very shortly. So if you've missed anything or you want to go and study some of the special places, then you can do that at your leisure. And somebody's asking about, for example, the book titles.
I'll send Rita, if you didn't take a screenshot, Rita, I did, and I'll send you that. Okay.
We don't worry, nothing is going to be lost here. Now Françoise Salomon is asking, does rhodoluteum grow on alkaline soil?
Well, this is a very good question. This is actually, it grows in an acidic seam, so not easily, I think, is the answer. Yeah.
Okay, so a rhododendron, true to the name. Okay, thank you. Oh, now this is a quite interesting question. Also, is if you do make a list of plants for us, thank you very much. Would you like to just indicate which ones you've successfully cultivated at Sparoza? Because
I mean, a lot
introducing them is very, very interesting. suppose.
It is. I mean, a lot of these plants are, yes, I can put notes as to when things have been cultivated or cuttings have been taken, or we've managed to grow them in the nursery here. A lot of the plants I've shown I wouldn't be able to grow at Sparoza, truth be told, because of them needing very specific requirements or particular cold, which I can't provide at 200 meters on the Mesogeian plain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we've got absolutely masses and masses and masses of people saying what a wonderful presentation, how moving it was, what a poet you are, and wonderful journey through mythology and so on, and to tears. Gosh, wonderful. Now a practical question. If you find an orchid in a particularly risky place, such as the side of the road, which would just be run over, would you move it?
No, never.
No, okay, just leave it to its fate. Okay. Lots of more people thanking you, and in particular the orchids, and somebody mentioning that, of course, that they get the same orchids in the metapontine of Basilicata, which is very far south in Italy, about 20 kilometers from the coast. But of course, as she points out, she is in Magna Grecia. It was originally a Greek colony.
Absolutely.
I think that's it. It's so many flattering comments. It's becoming embarrassing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Yvonne. Would anybody like to speak directly to Lucie? If so, put your yellow hand up, and then you can, because I've got about 4 screens here. So, okay. Well, you've obviously done a very thorough job.
Well, thank you all so much for having me.
Let's not put you to too much work, Lucie. I mean, don't go into extensive, I would say, extensive note form. Just, we would be grateful just to receive a summary list.
Plant list.
Maybe an asterisk if they're actually growing in the garden.
Perfect.
Obviously, each and every one of us has different conditions, and we're at different altitudes and on different soils. But what we've obviously seen here, particularly I thought where the old mine site, the old mining site, I thought that was just a very good example of how it just looks so good. You couldn't really make it in a garden.
This is it. I mean,
yes.
It's the strange thing of nature doing it so well that it's insanely humbling, basically, as all of us as garden makers. We could only dream to make anything even a fraction as beautiful as how it appears in,
but I think if you keep looking,
that's it.
It will come. It will sort of seep into us. Hopefully.
That's it, and it is also, it's about looking and getting that sort of detail which enables you to understand plants better and where they place themselves naturally, and so that therefore you can get a better garden, a more beautiful garden, and healthier, happier plants by observing them in nature.
Okay, so we do have one question, Anne. Anne White. Hi, Anne. If you'd like to unmute, Anne White, or somebody on Anne White's computer. You've got your yellow hand up. You need to unmute yourself, Anne. Go down to the left-hand corner and press the little mic. We can't hear you. I think I can only ask you to do it. I can't do it for you. Okay, Anne, if you go down to the left-hand corner, you see your microphone. If you press that, it will unmute you. You've got your hand up. No good. Okay, sorry for that. Okay, Lucie, thank you. And we do have, for everybody's information, as you will see on, is that Anne? Are you there? Anne, can you see me? You need to unmute yourself. You just go down with your cursor onto the bottom hand corner, left-hand corner at the bottom of your screen, and you see a little microphone. And press that.
Whilst Anne's doing that, can I just mention we've got another chat comment. This is from Stavros Savalos, saying that for tulips, it would be interesting to contact Dr. Kriegas. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, Nikos Kriegas is the man who is responsible for the tulips.gr program that I was mentioning in the talk, and that has enabled me to travel with Lefteris. So if anyone's interested, it is a website, tulips.gr, and you can see the work that they've been doing on collecting and examining Greek native and naturalized tulips.
Super, thank you.
Okay, Anne, have you had any success?
I think so.
Well done.
Yeah. I just want to ask Lucy, are these meadows quite dependent on the roaming goats and sheep? Because I find on Zakynthos, they're disappearing along with the quality of them seems to be so dependent on having goats nibbling. And I find in my garden, I just can't be the goat. I can't get round all the time nibbling.
It's a really interesting question, this, and I don't have a really good answer, I'm afraid, because it all depends on the density of the goat, basically. And if it's overgrazed, that can be disastrous. So there's a really fine balance. And I'm seeing even on my hillside here at Sparoza that there's a lot of illegal grazing going on, and that's really, really damaging native shrubs and also the geophyte display. So all the Hemantoglossum robertianum that should be flowering right now, they get eaten. So if the geophytes are being eaten, they can't set seed, they don't spread. But if you have, for example, the images I showed you on Samos of the goat-pruned quercus, that is because you have lone goats or couples of goats that are going across the mountain, and you don't have flocks of 50 goats across the hillside at one time, causing huge amounts of destruction. So it's a fine balance, really, and places like Crete are hugely at risk of losing some of the diversity of their flora because of overgrazing. Because dairy is such an important industry. So it's a very, very interesting question, and I think it depends, really. It's a tricky one to say. It can be positive and it can also be very, very negative.
I just find the thistles just take over, and then I can't find the little orchids. I can't find the smaller things, and I can't keep up with dealing. I've tried spot weeding the thistles, and I just can't.
Have you tried a donkey?
No, I haven't tried a donkey. Well, yes, I have tried a donkey by mistake, and it eats everything. And unfortunately, it starts with the roses, and then works its way down to stuff it's already had.
Oh no.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Okay, George, I've got two more questions. One from Stephanie, and George, your hand is up, so well done. You'll come next. Okay, so Stephanie first. Stephanie Saltz. Hi.
Hi. Lucy, many thanks for this talk. Your enthusiasm was really inspiring and infectious. So I really would love to go out now. So I'm close to Mount Taygetos and start to hunt plants myself. And I was wondering whether you had some tips for us how to actually maximize the chance of survival, when we have cuttings or seed collection, apart from obviously picking the right plants that are suitable for your garden, for your soil, for the exact location. Is there anything else? What do you do with the seeds and with the clippings before you put them into the garden? How do you prepare the ground? Or anything would be helpful. Thank you.
Basically, you've got to be very, very careful and also be very conscious of making sure that the seed that you're collecting or the cuttings that you're taking being viable material. So you don't want to pick unripe seed because it's not going to do anything, and it basically you're stopping the plant's chance of reproducing. So you have to be very, very careful with what you take and make sure that you have understood that it's ripe and ready to go, basically. And with cuttings, it's the same thing applies. I always travel with seed bags and with little plastic containers so that you can have kitchen roll, water and a plastic bag so that you can wrap your cuttings in kitchen towel and put water around them so that you're keeping them fresh and damp. And you can put them into, you know, those little boxes that you get dishwasher tablets into. You can fit lots of different cuttings into one of those, and it keeps really, really well for a couple of days. The method I use for cuttings at Sparoza is something that I've inherited from Left Terrace. And we use very skinny jiffy plugs. And these are amazing little coir plugs that are much skinnier than the ones that I've used in the past in the UK. And what's so brilliant about them is that you can see immediately something is rooted because they're so slim. So as soon as you've got a root, you don't have to disturb the cutting and you can plant it up almost immediately. And you can keep it in a normal domestic sort of glass house. And you just need to make sure that you keep your cutting jiffy damp. So in the winter, you're probably watering once a day. In the summer, if you've got cuttings that are still around, when the temperature goes up, you might need to water as much as 3 times a day. But it's just to make sure that they're not drying out. But again, the key with cuttings is to make sure that the material isn't too soft and isn't too hard, so that you've got this sort of fine line between, and it's something I'd encourage everyone to play with their plants, really. And if you feel material as it's growing, you can feel when it's too soft, and you can feel when there's just a bit of flexibility, but it's still malleable. And that is when it's spot on for using as a cutting material.
Lucy, can I add something in there if you don't mind? Sorry, it's Manoj Malde. I'm from the UK, but I garden in Crete as well. Just a little bit of advice on the cuttings as well, if it helps anyone, is what we generally tend to do is where you see a node on the plant where there's going to be a shoot that's going to appear from that node. Sometimes it's quite a good idea to just scratch that node a little bit. So you're kind of almost taking the outer epidermis off, you're damaging that node a little bit. And when you then put that cutting into the compost in the jiffy, you'll find that the roots will start appearing from that node. And often that's quite a successful way of actually taking cuttings.
Absolutely, and always cut just below a node.
Below the node, yeah.
If you don't have a viable node, you don't have the hormone concentration that will form the roots. So yeah, it's definitely worth doing a little bit of reading and a little bit of research before you try and take your own cuttings. But it's very, very easy, and it's incredibly satisfying when you get good at it. So yeah, and a very easy way of propagating things very quickly and satisfactorily. So.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. George?
Well, yes, Lucy, I just wanted to say I've never seen or heard any presentation even remotely like this. Really, your pictures.
That's a good thing.
the pictures that you showed us are just incredibly beautiful.
Thank you.
The landscapes, the scenery, as well as all the plants that we can see up close. The very nice way you've done it. And you obviously love these plants and care about them and know about them and every detail about them and what makes them work and how they function and how to treat them. I'm just amazed and thrilled. So I'm going to say, if you ever I'm in Southern California, so if you ever find yourself heading in this direction, please let me know, because I would like to arrange for you to speak to various garden clubs and public gardens who would love to see and hear your talks.
Thank you so much, George. I'd love that.
It's just been an amazing treat. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's a wonderful place to end our evening. So thank you, George. And thanks again to Lucie. You've been wonderful. Lucie's also given me a great assistance this year in getting a few of the upcoming speakers, including of our sort of slightly difficult to get hold of plant hunter, who is always up some hill, so can never actually answer an email. But he has promised to come on in July, because I presume it's so hot there that you can't actually go out and do plant hunting. So it's a slightly strange month for the rest of us, because we might all be on holiday and so on. But so I do hope that we will all be around. And thank you, Lucie, for everything.
Thank you so much.
See you all next month, when we're actually going to San Francisco. So that'll be a slight contrast.
Brilliant.
Thanks again, everybody. Good evening. Bye. Bye-bye.